Mzwandile, look, it's very legalese, and they were talking a lot of case law and all of those things. But what are the key things that you took out of this, especially the allegation that Mr. Downer was not fair at all to Jacob Zuma?
Thank you very much, Nombo. Of course, it's very legal. So we will speak about that which we understand fully, and fortunately, they have not delved into the complex and complicated matters that need only legal understanding. I think to your question, Nombo, basically, this is what has happened. So they've basically laid the basis for their plea. Remember, the plea has been a not guilty plea. So what does that mean? Then they are advancing some of those reasons. For me, what I took from this is that they are essentially saying the reason why they want to go that route, because they feel Mr. Downer is acting from the political perspective. And then also he is ignoring, or he has ignored, some of the things that may have happened from the intelligence perspective. If you hear them refer to how he, for example, assisted when the DA needed, I think, some of the affidavit. So all those things are what they will put up as part of evidence. So I think when they argue the case on the 19th, we will hear more why they are saying this is politically motivated, and then from the side of Mr. Billy Downer, and of course they will make some of those examples where they're saying certain things were intercepted, meaning the intelligence also was at play here.
Yeah. So just looking within the court and outside of the court, of course, Mr. Zuma has a lot of support this time round. Last week, the other week when he had his case, it was less people, but there are more people now, and the ANC organisers saying that they expect at least 500 people to be there in accordance with COVID-19 rules. It is interesting as well to see that the suspended ANC Secretary General Ace Magashula is there and so on. Just give us your perspective around, you know, who's come to support him and the general dynamics around that.
You see, what's interesting about this case, Nombo, is that as much as we sit here and watch the developments inside court, which relate specifically to the former president, but this is the case which is being used by those who perhaps have an axe to grind, I think, with the current situation within the ruling party. Remember, the suspended Secretary General last time made it clear that he was going to go to...
Sorry, Mzwandile, let me interrupt you there. Apparently, we can cross over to our colleague Samkele Maseko, who's standing by for us and, of course, has been observing proceedings. Samkele, over to you.
To the plea, but of course there's no doubt it was clear that the issues that they are recycling in court, it's issues that have been dealt before. But even if you listen to the gist of the argument, it has got very little to do with Billy, even if those things that taken place had to do with third parties. And now they must come up with proof in terms of what they are alleging, their sources, and also annexures that are able to prove the allegations that they are making. But it is clear that the tactic is once again to delay. But what is key and a huge milestone for us is the fact that the case has now started. Almost 2 decades later, this case has started, they have pleaded, and we have now a trial judge. So we are not going to be juggling things around. We have a judge whose sole interest is to conclude the criminal matter. And therefore you could see also the court also wants to stick to make sure that we deal with the issues. Of course, we have to deal with the plea. But from our side, it's quite a frivolous plea. And you can see that, as I said, the allegations are being recycled. But there's no doubt that we are going to continue. All we want the accused to be able to answer to the merits. Listening to the plea of accused number 2, they dealt with the issues that put before the in terms of the allegation, though there was no issue of politicizing the case. It's a criminal case. There are 18 criminal charges that the accused must face, and they must respond to those things.
Siko, what's your attitude towards what seemingly may be described as a political statement that was being made by accused number one's lawyers, in that they were trying to actually outline, the defense, but it seemed as though the judge was also saying, well, you're actually now making the arguments now instead of waiting for that opportunity. Would you describe that as having made a political statement?
As I said, in terms of what has happened today and has been happening, is that for them it's more about dealing with the gallery, talking to the people outside, not dealing with the issues in court and getting to the merits. Because if you look at the argument and even the court's frustration, is that the issues that the people were dealing with are not issues that are addressing and are going to help us get as soon as possible to dealing with the plea and dealing with the merits. And therefore, understandably, we should have finished long time ago today. However, they have to speak to the gallery. That's the intention, is to politicize. But we're hoping that when we come back, we'll facts and be deal with the allegations that were put to them.
Even though today accused number 1 and 2 pleaded not guilty, yes, it's significant because we have that now, but it's far from the start, judging by these preliminary issues that need to be ironed out.
Look, as soon as we get to July 8, of course, you can see that almost 2 months now, the defense is kicking for touch. But as soon as those matters are heard and the judge is able to pronounce on the matter, just immediately thereafter, it depends on how many days he's going to want to deal with that. And soon thereafter, once we have that decision, we're able to get to the merits. We're eager to get to the merits, and we're hoping that the defense, particularly accused number 1, is equally eager to get to the merits in order for them to be able to account to the accusations that we have put before them, and then we can be able, or the court can be able at the end, to decide whether or not they are guilty.
Mr. Ngwema, we've seen that you've briefed the legal team that was part of the permanent stay prosecution that you had. How far is your brief to Advocate Wim Tingroove and Advocate Pietermaritzburg?
Of course, we have appointed 4 advocates to deal with this matter, because our prosecutor cannot deal with this matter given the fact he's directly affected. We have 4 senior advocates who are going to deal with that matter. They have been given powers as prosecutors to join the team on this matter, so we have included those 4. They have delegation to prosecute, they have delegation now, or they have a brief now to deal with the application in terms of the special plea in terms of 106 1H.
Do you have a watertight case?
There is no doubt that we have a watertight case. We have 18 charges. We have put those charges before the accused. And in fact, even if you listen to their rebuttal, there's not a single point they make that we have cooked the charges. Everything else that they have been raising are issues peripheral to the case. So we have the allegations, we have strong evidence, we have credible 217 witnesses that are prepared to come here and testify in support of the allegations that we have made. Yes, indeed, we have a good case.
Mr. Ngwema, the accused number 1's legal team says that you essentially used the Shabir Sheikh case as a litmus test to try and get a successful prosecution there to see whether you can further prosecute accused number 1, which is the former deputy president and now former president of the Republic of South Africa. Is there any credence to those accusations they're making?
You must remember a number of issues happened during that time, and a decision at that point was taken to charge Shabir. However, what is important is whether or not the allegations that are put before them are credible, whether the witnesses that are coming to testify on behalf of the state are they credible witnesses. So the issue for us is whether or not the law has been broken. South Africa is the country of laws, and those who break the laws must account in terms of the constitution of this country. So what is key and what is important is that law has been broken, and those people who have broken the law in terms of the evidence that we have must come in account, and they have to clear themselves, and in the end the court must decide on the guilt or innocence of those involved.
Looking at the number of years this matter has taken, are you confident that the quality of evidence and the witnesses that you need is everything up to quality as we speak, bearing in mind the time that has lapsed?
We are guided by the National Prosecuting Authority prosecution policy, and we have to pass those tests in order for us to be able to proceed with court matters. And in terms of this particular case, so that our prosecution is in line with prosecution policy. And in terms of those things, we have credible evidence, we have In fact, we have all it takes for us to be able to prosecute this case. So nothing much has been lost in terms of time, and therefore we're able to proceed 2 decades later on this matter. And that's why we're fairly delighted today that the accused were able to plead. We now have a criminal trial which has started. We have a criminal judge, and therefore we'll be able to deal with the merits.
Mr. Ngwema, Thales is presenting quite a substantive defense to the charges against it. They're saying that they did not pay a bribe to Shabir Sheikh. They're saying that the very agreement that you say existed never actually, in fact, occurred, that they can provide credible evidence that there was no money laundering, there was no attempt to conceal the payment. They attempt to be bringing quite a substantive defense to the charges against them. Are they a concern for you?
Of course, that was a distinctive difference between the two accused. One dealt with the merits of the case, and dealt with the politics or conspiracy theories around the case. But what is key for us, because we do this business on a daily basis, most accused come with those things, and it's up to the court. We are going to present our case. As I have said, that we have got the witnesses, we have got the documentations, we are ready to lead those witnesses to prove the accused number 2 is guilty of the offences that we are accusing them. I don't want to rebut in terms of facts what they are saying, because that's the duty of the court. I don't want to be in contempt in terms of the court. However, we have given them the indictment. All of you have got a copy of the indictment, and we have no doubt that number 2 as well is guilty of the charges that we have put before them.
Mr. Ngwema, we are just going to doorstop Des van Rooyen here, the treasurer of MK. You respond, you look at me, you respond to the first question, then we go to the second question.
Okay.
Your support for former President Zuma, the essence of it, why?
We have said it in the past that as an association, we have resolved on this matter that Comrade Zuma, as our president, will forever enjoy our support. And part of ensuring that Comrade Zuma is subjected to a fair and a just process.
What of the ANC's National Working Committee saying those who made utterances here last week could be possibly charged and disciplined for that, saying people must support former President Jacob Zuma but not address?
I'm not going to comment on that, because to start with, I'm not even sure what informed that, because we have been here, you know it very well. We have been here, even some of them who are in the NWC, they've been here to confirm their support to Comrade President Zuma. So I'm literally shocked of such a statement. But I'm not going to comment because I am not informed of the basis of such a statement.
Your ally, Mr. Magashule, the suspended SG of the ANC, may have more charges conferred against him for his utterances here last week. About that?
No, I'm still saying I'm not going to say anything about the position of the NWC on some of the comments that were made here, including the comment made by Comrade Ace Magashule.
Former President Jacob Zuma has been calling for his day in court. He finally has his day in court. He has pleaded not guilty. But let's talk about, do you trust the court processes as you support him? Why are you not allowing court processes to take place?
No. It's not like the court processes are not allowed to take place. They are taking place. And our president is exercising his right to respond. Of course, to processes. So there's nothing wrong. There's no one who's stopping these processes. Processes are unfolding as expected. Thank you very much.
That was Des van Rooyen, the former Deputy Minister of Finance. I'm going to bring in my colleague Simpiwe Makanya, who was inside court, just to give a basic summary of what happened inside. Simpiwe, just a basic outline and summary of what transpired inside.
Well, Samgele, a few significant things happened in court this morning. The first one being, of course, the presence of advocates Dali Mpofu, now representing the former president. You went to Nkandla when the EFF leader Julius Malema visited the former president, and he was also part of that delegation, a surprise show. The second issue, Samgele, is the issue of the former president pleading not guilty in all the 18 charges that have been put before him, as well as of course, his co-accused, the French arms company, Thales. But in terms of the proceedings inside court, we saw the leader, or rather the advocate Dali Mpofu, basically tabling the reasons as to why they believe that the former president is under this situation that he finds himself in terms of these charges. One of the aspects that he spoke about is the issue of the political interference, saying that Advocate Billy Downer has in the past shown that he's actually linked to the political aspect of this case. 1, 2. Another issue is the issue of media leaks, which has seemingly been, presented by the defense, of course, accusing Advocate Billy Downer of having secret meetings with investigative journalists, and also accusing him of leaking information. That's basically what the situation court Samgele.
Well, Makanya, we also see the visuals of former President Jacob Zuma's son. We're just going to step in and get some sound from him.
Thank you very much, sir.
But as a family, though, how are you feeling?
Do you think that the plea is sufficient?
I think so. He pleaded not guilty. So he pleaded not guilty, and we'll take it from there.
And in terms of having Mr. Downer removed, the arguments that have been made there, are you satisfied that the court heard enough, and of course those who are supporting your father heard enough from the lawyers today?
Ma'am, that's not my decision to make. We wait and we see. I think the judge has spoken, and he's going to speak when he has to deliberate. That's not my decision to make, so we'll wait to hear from him.
Mr. Zuma Jr., just the essence, how do you feel about the readiness of your father's case, and knowing that he's represented by senior counsel advocate Dalimpofe at this point?
A lot of the media to Desani, not Mr. Zuma Jr., number one. Number two, whatever his decision is, his game plan, he has to stick with it, and all the best to them, whichever legal representation he uses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jacob Zuma Jr., the son of former President Jacob Zuma, leaving the court there. As more leaders of the ANC will be coming out after paying and also supporting the former president in court. I'm going to further bring in my colleague Makanya before we go to Ayanda, where the ANC supporters are. Just essentially the crux of the case here. This South Africans, some of them have waited for over 16 years for this plea of former President Jacob Zuma on 18 counts, pleading not guilty.
A significant moment indeed, Samgele. When we saw the former president standing up and pleading and saying that he pleads not guilty to all the charges that have been put before him, basically paints a picture of how far this court process has gone in terms of having the formal case beginning inside the courtroom.
Essentially, also speaking on the crux of the case, the former president pleading not guilty. Thales coming out there saying that they've got proof that this case is not substantive. There was no agreement between Thales and Nkobi Holdings of Shabir Sheikh, and former President Jacob Zuma claiming that there's political conspiracy in his case. Just the crux of those issues in essence.
Exactly. Well, that's essentially what the spokesperson of the NPA, Mr. Sipho Ngwema, was alluding to a few moments ago, basically saying that Thales took a stance of dealing with the crux and the essence of what this whole case is about, as opposed to what the defense of the former president was actually presenting inside the courtroom. Samgel, I can also just perhaps tell you that another aspect that was raised by the defense of the former president when it comes to the issue of the recusal application, which has been heard just a few moments ago, is the issue of, one, political interference, two, the issue that Billy Downer has been accused of having sort of secret meetings with some investigative journalists. One was actually named inside the courtroom. And also, importantly, the issue of allegations, rather, of foreign intelligence being used to actually prosecute the former president. As to whether the evidence is there to back those allegations up, we'll have to wait and see, Samgele.
Well, Makanya, before we discuss further, just to ask my colleague Tulani, just to show you the visuals of the MKMVA shield, which is here outside court, as the leaders of the ANC and former President Zuma will be coming out. They have stood alongside here and will be waiting for the former president to walk out. Supra Mwamapelo, the former provincial chairperson of the ANC within the Northwest Province. The likes of Super Zuma has already walked out. Zandile Kumete has already walked out. The former mayor of eThekwini municipality and former regional chairperson. But to get an atmosphere of the political festivities that will be happening of the coalition of the wounded outside, let me throw to my colleague Ayanda Mhlongo, who's going to sum that particular aspect of the political festivities. The Game of Thrones, as they say, started in court through Sipongwema's words, and now the actual political Game of Thrones is going to take place at the Pietermaritzburg Market Square. Over to you, Ayanda.
Well, thanks very much, Sam, to you, Simpiwe, as well. Of course, where I am, it's just at the stage where the supporters of the former president, of course, have gathered here. They're eagerly awaiting that any minute now the former president will be making his way out of the court here to address them. Great deal of excitement. They've been here since the morning. Other supporters having arrived from last night. Many have traveled far to be here from provinces like Mpumalanga, the Free State and the Northwest to show show support for the former president. It's getting a little bit loudy where I am. Of course, there is a whole list of entertainers that are here. Well-known musicians have been brought here to entertain the crowds, as of course they're waiting for that all-important address by former President Jacob Zuma. And I suppose it's going to be very interesting today, Samgelo, and to you, Simpiwe, as well, in terms of what the speakers are going to be talking about and what their messages are going to be. And of course, you know that there's been some concerns in the past around the messages of some of the speakers, and particularly one that didn't sit right with the ANC leaders here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal were the statements made by the suspended Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, as well as ANC NEC member Tony Yengen. And we understand that, in fact, they had discussions with these leaders to respect this platform and to not take or bring their political issues and ventilate them here. We also know that former President Jacob Zuma, we have been told, has said that this is not a platform for people to settle political scores. This is a platform for those who are here to support the former president. And of course, what has happened in the past and likely to happen again this time is that this is the opportunity that the former president gets to engage with the members of the public and update them on how he's feeling about the case. Today we have noted in courts, of course, that part of his defense is now brought in advocate Dalimpofu to his defense. And so what he would do is that he would take his supporters through the court proceedings. And what happened, an important day for him today in court, where he has finally given the opportunity to plead, and he has pleaded not guilty to the 16 charges, which include fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering. So this is going to be an opportunity for the members of the public, and I suppose for South Africans at large who have been following these proceedings, to hear what is on the president's mind and moving forward, what he plans, what are his plans moving forward. As we know, we will be back on the 19th for the hearing for the recusal of State Advocate Billy Downer. But certainly, just looking around here, great deal of excitement from the supporters who have gathered out here this morning. As I've said, since the early morning, they've braved the cold. It is now hot and warm, and yet they are still here saying that they're here to show their support for the former president. We did make mention earlier on that one of the concerns, and I think if you look at the crowds that are out here today, has been the fact that there's absolutely no social distance. Some of the people who are out here as well are not wearing masks. This despite the fact that the organizers of this event had indicated and said that they were going to ensure that there is going to be social distance, that people were going to be masked, that people were going to be sanitized, and that certainly is not the case. So that is going to be quite a big concern. They even had said that this time around they've erected this massive stage because the intent was for people to be able to spread out here at Freedom Park cannot converge together. But unfortunately, it seems, despite whatever efforts and plans they might have put in place, the crowds are still gathered and are crowded into one section. So that would no doubt be a concern, particularly with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that there are provinces like Gauteng, provinces like the Free State that are now in the third wave, and the numbers of infections are growing rapidly. It's getting a little bit noisy here where I am, and let me take things back to you, Samgele.
Yes, indeed, and we are still waiting for some ANC leaders to come out. Here we do know that they are having a little huddle, but there is some movement now coming out. I foresee that the suspended Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, will be coming out of court now. There is some movement going on. You can see that those who are with former President Jacob Zuma's office, Vukile Matebula, they're walking past. They are going to see if the state is all checked and if security is up to standard for the arrival of the former president. To address those ANC members whom my colleague Ayanda Mhlongo says they are not there in their magnitudes as they would usually be, that there are some issues of social distancing that are taking place there. There have been those allegations that there have not been enough buses that have been available to ferry people to come and support the former president. And you'd remember in that tea session that took place, which my colleague Simpiwe Makanya was attesting to in Nkandla KwaDunuse, they were having tea with former President Jacob Zuma, and Dalimpofu was also there just to speak, Makanya, on the politics of it, the festival of politics that's about to take place at the Market Square.
Certainly, Samgele, what we are witnessing basically is the coming together of those who used to be, hardcore supporters of the former president of the ANC and former president of the country, Jacob Zuma. Among them, of course, is the former Minister of Finance, Malusi Gigaba, also, attending this court case. First time seeing him attending this particular court case. And a short while ago, as you said, Samgele, we spoke to the...
Makanya, I'm going to have to cut you short. I'm going to go and stop Advocate Dalimpofu, and hopefully he will say a word or two. Advocate Mpofu, how are you? Just you're surprised. Many South Africans are surprised that you're here to represent the former president.
I'm not allowed to speak to the media about the case that I'm involved in.
Mr. Mpofu, as you representing Mr. Zuma, does it have anything to do with that tea that you had in Nkandla? When did you decide to represent him? When were you briefed on the case?
We don't decide to represent people. They decided who they represent.
When were you
Mr. Mpofu, Julius Malema predicted that your leader, Julius Malema, predicted that you would be representing former President Zuma.
Pardon?
Did you have enough time to work on this case to prepare for it?
What do you think?
Is it true that you're representing pro bono? Is it true that you're representing him pro bono?
Are you taking this on pro bono basis?
Well, that was Advocate Dali Mpofu there, and he is saying a few words. The line seems to have dropped there, guys, and that's Advocate Dali Mpofu. He is representing former President Jacob Zuma in this fraud and corruption trial. He was alongside Advocate Masugu. As I think at this point in time, we are going to go back with my colleague Tulani, as we wait for those leaders of the ANC to come back. And we are speaking with Simpiwe Makanya of the essence of this case. You'd remember that tea that EFF leader Julius Malema had with former President Jacob Zuma in Nkandla. And many people predicted that Advocate Mpofu was there to discuss legal matters that former President Jacob Zuma was having with the state, starting with the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, fast forwarding it to this fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering case with 18 counts that the former president is currently facing here at the Pietermaritzburg Regional High Court. Those are some of the issues that are essentially being ventilated here in court as we await for the suspended Secretary General of the ANC to go out and to go and speak to those supporters. As I further bring in my colleague Simpiwe Makanya, Dalimpofu saying he doesn't speak on matters that he's briefed in. Are you surprised that he's essentially here to represent former President Zuma?
Certainly, I think everyone is surprised, Samgele. But if you connect the dots, so to say, judging by that meeting which took place at Nkandla, where he was joined by the when he was accompanying the EFF leader, Julius Malema. I'm going to give you the microphone, Samgele, so that you don't stop.
There's the provincial secretary of the ANC, Mtumseni.
Now the point no.
Are you ready to be booed, Mr. Ntuli?
Now let's talk. Are you going to address those ANC members there? When you addressed them last time, they booed you. Are you going to address them today? Please, provincial secretary, speak to us. Are you going to?
We are literally holding
ANC members who are there.
You are blocking me. I'm required to be on the stage already.
Are you going to be?
I'm going to the stage here.
Are you here today actually from KZN? You said your concern was that those who booed you were from other provinces.
It's not necessarily concerning where do people come from. It's the conduct that becomes a matter of grave concern to us. It's not necessarily about where do you come from, but how do you then conduct yourselves as a loyal member of the ANC, because there is an expectation attended to those who call themselves comrades and members of the ANC. The way you conduct yourselves, the way you address your concerns, and the way you behave in the midst of the challenges that we are going through as a movement.
Some are criticizing you, though, for this contradiction. I'll pose this question again. Some are saying you are contradicting yourself in supporting the former president. The ANC says put some distance in between the ANC and those who are charged of corruption, but you are here supporting the former president. Are you not confusing yourselves?
No, it's not a contradiction. You know, we come from a long way with the case facing former President Zuma. And there were several decisions that were taken by the ANC National Executive Committee, the conferences and the NGCs. So it's not entirely a contradiction. That's why when we went to the leadership, we said, look, we can't allow a situation where a long-standing decision like this one is simply taken away from our right as an organization. But of course, the other issue was that we couldn't allow people to ascend into the stage where former President Zuma is appearing in court in order to soil the name and the reputation of our movement.
Thank you very much, Mtumseni Ntuli. That was Mtumseni Ntuli, the provincial secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, saying that he's going back to stage to go, and essentially he's going to be the master of ceremonies there on the podium as the former president was going to address those supporters. He's the provincial secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. More leaders of the ANC will essentially be coming out now to speak to their members. I'm going to bring in my colleague Andam Shongo and Simpiwe Makanya just to speak on the essence of this particular case and the political festivities that are about to take place. And the numbers, I've not seen them. How are they looking outside at the square?
I think the anticipation, Sam, if you remember speaking from last week, and the mobilization that has gone through throughout the week, probably not the numbers that they expected. If you look at the Freedom Square, the organizers for this event on behalf of the former president had said that they expect the entire Freedom Square to be packed. And slightly not the numbers that I think they'd anticipated. Of course, Sam, you'd know that one of the concerns, that even though the suspended ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule did make an open invite to the people of Free State and other provinces to come in their numbers, there was a great deal of concern from the province of KwaZulu-Natal that it was possibly a reckless statement for him to have been made, particularly at the time when the country is still battling the COVID-19 pandemic. And so from the KZN perspective, they were telling us that where they had a lot of interest in people wanting to come through, they've had to cut down on the numbers. But on the one hand, Sam, they told us that they were going to pack the square. Is it because people did not want to come out voluntarily to be part of today's event, or is it due to the COVID-19 pandemic? I think that's where the question is. But certainly, I think in terms of what we've been told over the last weekend, last night and today, these are certainly not the numbers that they'd hoped to come out here today.
Last week, the provincial secretary of the ANC, in particular Mtumseni Ntuli, and the chairperson Sithe Zigalala, they were booed on the podium. Mtumseni Ntuli has just walked out now saying he's going to the stage. He's essentially going to be the master of ceremonies for this program. Are you anticipating another horrific episode for him?
Samgelo, this morning you spoke to Mtumseni. In fact, let's just speak about how they were welcomed this morning. When the suspended Secretary General of the ANC arrived, you saw how crowds flocked to his car. In fact, he couldn't even get out of the car chanting ace, ace, ace. When Mtumseni came in, nobody said anything. And there was a group of people that in fact were standing next to me, and I heard one of the ladies remark Nangulo, but not in a meaning here's this one. But obviously that expression, not in a nice way, not in a way to say this is one of our leaders and we're happy to see him. As well, the chairperson of the ANC and Premier in KwaZulu-Natal, Sihle Zikalala, you spoke to this morning when he arrived. It was mainly the members of the media that converged around him to try and get a comment from him. But insofar as the crowds that had been here coming out and showing the excitement and happiness to see them when they arrival, we did not see that with the provincial leaders of the ANC. We saw it when former President Jacob Zuma's son, Tutuzani, arrived. We saw it when Malusi Kigaba arrived and some of the other national leaders. But insofar as the local leaders of the ANC, and some of the people have been saying, no, we don't want them. We don't want them to be part of this part of this event, rather, and because they feel that the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal has sold out. And the word that they've continuously used is that they sold out the former president. And so it's a wait-and-see game. The former president has said, Sam, you remember last week that he stressed that this is not a platform for those that are aggrieved, for those that have internal party issues, to ventilate their frustrations here. That those that are here must be here to support Jacob Zuma. And so the message as well, we spoke earlier on to Pastor Vusi Dube, who's responsible for the mobilization of the president, and he said in fact that he had personally spoken to the former president this morning, and the former president said even before he comes out of court, he is going to get a report in terms of the mood and what is happening. If there's any booing, he's not going to go out and address his supporters. So he is stern whether or not the supporters will respect his wishes and respect that this gathering is for those that support President Jacob Zuma, former President Jacob Zuma. We'll just have to wait and see.
It's only you who can get those nitty-gritties of information. Very few can get that information. And I'm also going to bring in Makanya. The issue of you bring in of the reception of the suspended Secretary General, the reception for Mtumiseni Ntuli, Sihle Zikalala. There are 11 regional conferences that need to take place. Mpu and Northern Cape has just gone to their regional conferences. It's their provincial conference this weekend. No one can doubt that the roadmap to the 55th National Conference has essentially begun. The former president saying this court case must not be used to fight battles of the ANC. Essentially looking at the politics of it today. What can we expect from the Secretary General of the ANC, who's suspended, once he takes to that podium, bearing in mind there may be more charges added against him? I'll start with you, Makanya, then to Ayan.
It's not only that, Samgele, it's also the issue of the branch BGMs that have been, conducted recently. The chaotic scenes that we have been seeing on social media speaks to the issue of the divisions within the ANC in this particular province. But if you speak to the leaders, they will tell you that the ANC is uniting, the ANC is renewing itself. But if you go deep in and observe the BGMs that are currently being conducted, it will basically give you a true sense of how the situation is looking like in the province of KwaZulu-Natal when you talk about the issue of unity.
And Zandile Kumete, we spoke to her earlier on. We asked her if she had stepped aside. She kept quiet. She did not want to indulge that particular question. I've seen a report where she says she's learned on social media that she stepped aside. She did not go to the branch consultation meetings that the likes of Begintuli, the deputy coordinator of the region of eThekwini, were having. What's the essence of Zandile Kumete? Mtumiseni said they had an hour-long meeting yesterday, hence he didn't go to that branch consultation meeting. Essence of her politics with the provincial leadership.
Well, our indications, Samgelo, is that she is going to voluntarily step aside. And this we understand her supporters, although some of them would be against the fact that she steps aside, saying that they still wanted clarity with regards to this resolution. And of course also because she is currently a member of the provincial legislature. So in terms of her work in the provincial legislature, what will this then mean for her? But what we've seen in the last couple of months, and my colleague here, Simpiwe Makane, will also attest to the fact that we've seen Zandile Kumete, who has not been fighting, who has not been aggressive towards the ANC leaders, if I may say, who's allowing the processes to unfold, who's subjecting herself to all the ANC processes. Because one of the problems, I suppose, Sam, that if she doesn't, and if she continues to be at loggerheads with the ANC, this might affect her chances moving forward. You know that she is a hot contender for the position. She wants to be re-elected as the chairperson of the ANC in its largest region in eThekwini. And so she's playing her cards safe, one might say, but I suppose in the coming months it's going to be interesting. In terms of her supporters, they're growing in support. And platforms like this also an opportunity for her. Just as you were here, Samgele, speaking to Duduzane Zuma when he was coming out. In fact, Zandile Gumede went to the stage and greeted the supporters who had gathered. And great joy and excitement and cheering, Mama, 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 as people have always referred her to as. So great deal of excitement. She's well received by her supporters. So I suppose she's just playing her cards right now.
They call her Umama Wase Tegwini, Umama Onama Branch. Well, only the ANC members can tell you that. Makanya, your last bite on the issues surrounding the support on the ground for former president. Can many people misconstrue that, the support for former President Zuma, as a support for the embattled Secretary General of the ANC?
Well, Samgele, that's the question that one of our media colleagues did pose to the suspended Secretary General Ace Makashule earlier on when he arrived, to say this court case has been happening for quite some time now, and we've not been seeing the Secretary General or the suspended Secretary General attending the court case. But his answer was that it just so happened that it coincided with the NEC meetings that have been that he was chairing as the Secretary General of the ANC. But speaking to the issue of those who are going to be addressing the supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, just now, Samgele, I can certainly tell you that the likes of Carl Niehaus and the likes of the Ace Makashule, suspended Secretary General of the ANC, they are going to be extra cautious as to what they say when they take to the podium, because, of course, you know the decision of the NWC of the ANC saying that they perhaps may be, facing more charges after what they said last week.
Well, guys, the boxing match is about to start with those wearing camouflage uniforms. In the words of Mavuso Msimang, he doesn't know who they are because they are not MK. In the words of former President Mbeki, he says he also doesn't know them. They are not members of Umkhonto Wesizwe that they were part of. Just under the essence of MK-MVA, their importance in the province and the role that they've played, particularly knowing that two stalwart leaders of the ANC don't regard them as the real Umkhonto Wesizwe veterans.
There certainly has been a back and forth in terms of the standing of the MK-MVA, particularly here in the province. But if there has been a year that we've seen the members of Umkhonto Wesizwe military veterans here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal coming up and showing their support for the former president. In fact, a lot of these members of the MK-MVA, Samgele, who are here, had travelled from Nkandla. They've been camped outside the former president's home now for, I think, about 4 months. If you remember, they first went to Nkandla around about the time when the former president was expected to appear before the Zondo Commission. There at a time there had been reports or concerns on whether or not there was going to be a decision that was going to be taken by the Zondo Commission to possibly, that may have led to an arrest of the former president. Those were the rumors at the time, and so they have camped outside in Nkandla.
Well,
since then.
And I'm going to disrupt you there as to show you visuals of Malusi Gigaba, ANC NEC member, alongside Sihle Zikalala. They are coming out.
Let's start with you.
No. Why you want an interview here? Because we're going to speak there. We'll then after that speak to you. Let's go and speak there.
Are you not worried to go to that stage?
No. That's not our worry. Please.
That was Sihle Zikalala, the provincial chairperson. Malusi Gigaba, who's been in the news for all sorts of reasons. They are essentially... Sorry?
I've already commented this morning.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was Malusi Gigaba, ANC NEC member, going with his ally who led the ANC Youth League together. That was Malusi Gigaba and Sihle Zikalala. There you can also see Supra Muhammapilo, the former chairperson of the ANC in the Northwest Province. Sihle Zikalala being a man of very few words today, particularly after what happened in the morning when he arrived here in court to support former President Jacob Zuma. Essentially, they are also going up to the stage now to that address of ANC leaders. Makanya, just those two leaders of the ANC, Malusi Gigaba and Sihle Zikalala, synonymous with the ANC Youth League of the time. They've risen in through the ranks of the ANC, particularly when you reflect on their generation. What does that generation of Sihle Zikalala, Malusi Gigaba and Hlakanipho Ntombela, who's the first spokesperson of the ANC, espouse in the dominant politics of the ANC today? Are they a generation that has missed its time? in governing the governing party?
A tricky question indeed, Samgele, but coming to the issue of the former Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba attending this particular court case, we've been here for quite some time now. Okay, I'm going to let you to continue.
The suspended Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, is now making his way out of court in order to go to the platform where they will be addressing those supporters of the ANC. My colleague Tulani is showing you those visuals of Mr. Magashule greeting those who will be coming out with him. You can see those who are his protectors, his staff are also walking out with him. He's suspended. More charges can be conferred against him by the ANC NEC. Many people have said that he's being opportunistic in his support of former President Zuma. Now, as we go to Mr. Magashule at the
Further charges.
Hey Maria, you want charges? What further charges are you talking about now?
Based on last week's utterances, they say if you address these supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, you could or you might be charged again.
Just be patient. We are going there. Just be patient.
Mr. Magashule, have you had an engagement with the incumbent president of the ANC after you've been suspended by the party? What have your engagements been with any of the top 6 members, if you have?
Okay. Be patient. The ANC is dealing with its own processes.
That was the suspended ANC Secretary General saying that ANC processes are unfolding. At any point in time from now, you will essentially have Zuma, the former president of the country. He has essentially come out and he is behind us now, and you will see those visuals that my colleague Tulani will be showing you at any point from now. We will try and get closer as you will see those live visuals on the South African Broadcasting Corporation of former President Jacob Zuma going to address his supporters here in court who are being moved by his security personnel as Umhlanganyelwa, as they call him, going towards to address his supporters. He's facing 18 counts of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering. He is flagged alongside Dudumieni, who failed to appear at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. The former president is essentially going now to address his supporters. You can hear those cheers, people chanting Zuma, Zuma as he goes to address them. These are the scenes that people saw 15 years ago. I was still a student going to one of the primary schools here in Pietermaritzburg when the former president was charged. At the time, he was the deputy president of the ANC, deputy president of the Republic of South Africa. You can see him waving. Tutumiani surprisingly failed to appear at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry during the course of the week, but she is here alongside former President Zuma. They are long-time allies as we are being moved by security personnel, but essentially the former president has been in Pietermaritzburg for the longest of time. You can see those visuals of him waving to his supporters. He's pleaded in this court of the Regional High Court in Pietermaritzburg. He's pleaded not guilty. Many people have spoken about him. The last time he appeared here, he had said that this case must not be used by others for their own political issues, and that the former president essentially has come here to support. We're being moved by security now. Who is here with the former president as he essentially makes his way to the podium alongside Dudu Miani, who is been with the former president for the longest of time, working together side by side. Essentially, you can see what's taking place